right here this afternoon. Sharp Facets Gallery. Dianne Belsom is with us. She is a tea partier. Does that mean that you have tea parties over there in Lawrence?
Well, not the kind you're thinking of, probably.
With nice tea and little crumpets and cookies?
Yeah, well, that would be great if we could, but not quite.
Not quite. So, how are things going over there in Lawrence? I know that the last time we talked to you, you had testified, I think. Or you were going
I was
to
about to. I had been up to D.C. for this whole press conference deal that I did, and then went up and testified before the U.S. House Ways and Means Committee about IRS harassment of our Tea Party group.
How did it feel to do that, Dianne?
Wow, it was kind of surreal. I flew up to D.C. and I was give a shout out to my representative, Jeff Duncan, who was so amazing and awesome, and he was very supportive, and he sent someone to the airport to pick me up, and Freedom Works had paid to fly me up there and pay for the hotel, so I go up the night before, and then the next morning we all met with our attorneys. There was 5 of us that were testifying, I think it was, and our attorney was like, with the ACLJ, they're representing all of us at no cost, which is really great. And they said, well, we don't think the Democrats will go after you because y'all are the victims. But they did go after us. And
so you were surprised by some of the questions?
Yeah, I was. And the whole thing, we had no break, and I think it lasted about 3.5 hours. It was really exhausting. So.
Did you get a bathroom break in there?
No.
I'm sorry, I need to finish up really quick. I gotta go.
Yeah. Well, the way they do it is they go back and forth, and the Democrats are on, well, it was really on my right, and the Republicans are on my left, and they're all sitting up front, and you're at this table in front of them, and they go back and forth. So each one has 5 minutes to either make statements or comments, or they can ask you questions if they want to. Some of them just talk and don't ask any questions.
Right.
And so it goes back and forth. But what I found out immediately was like, wow, I have to really pay attention to every single thing they say, because, they might blather on about something, and the next thing they're asking you a question, and if you weren't listening to what they were saying, it's a problem. So I had to really be on my toes and listen to what was going on, and so it was very mentally taxing.
Was it? Did you feel intimidated by it?
Well, I don't know as I would say I felt intimidated. I actually got very angry because when the Democrats started attacking us, they said to us, well, you need to just admit that your groups are political, and the money, basically this money could better be spent on families in need. And I was just livid, and I couldn't say anything. I had to wait until I was finally asked a question, and when I finally was it was one of the Republicans, I said, well, before I answer that, I just want to address this, basically what a 501c4 is, because donations to us are not tax deductible. We have no paid positions. We don't get any taxpayer money. The money we collect, it's basically have almost like a club of people who meet once a month for an educational topic and hear a speaker. And we have dues, like $30 a family, $20 an individual. It's not that much. So people pay their dues on money that they've already paid taxes on.
Sure.
And then we use all that money just for any expenses, like our room we rent to meet costs $75 a month. We have to pay expenses, whatever,
Sure.
just advertising, stuff like that. All of our money goes to that, and a lot of times we're funding it out of our own pockets anyways. And our annual budget's like $2,000 a year or less. It's not even that much for the IRS to be wasting their time on us, but it's like to try to imply we are taking money away from starving children. I was furious because they are the ones who are sitting up there on the taxpayer dime. They are the elitists who they take in all our taxpayer money and then they're wasting it on all this crap.
Right.
So, but then they're trying to tell us that we are somehow at fault. So I was very angry about that.
Sure. Well, I think you should be. I would just wonder now that it's been almost a year, hasn't it?
Yeah. It was the beginning of last June. So we're like 2 weeks shy of a year from when I testified. And when we formed Lawrence County Tea Party and applied for the 501c4 tax exempt status with the IRS in July of 2010. That is almost 4 years ago. 4 years, and they haven't been able to tell us either yes, you qualify for tax exemption, or no, you don't, and here's why.
So even though it's been a year, and even though there's a lawsuit and everything, what does your attorney say? I mean, I know there's like 40-some people that are groups.
Right,
groups.
right. There's over 40 groups on the lawsuit. Pretty much just, I mean, you know, like, I don't know, the IRS attorneys file something, and then our attorneys file something, and it's kind of back and forth. So we're kind of waiting for it to come up to trial. But I just kind of figured the IRS seems to have dug in their heels and just said, well, we're not going to do anything on this, and maybe they're just going to see how far they can push it and see what happens, because certainly I don't feel like any accountability to date has really happened as far as the whole IRS and the scandal.
Wow. So your attorney says what? Does he say, just hold on, we'll get it eventually, or does he just feel that this is just a road and we don't know where it's going to end?
I mean, he just sends me emails periodically with the updates on the case, so he hasn't really said one way or the other. Yeah. I just don't really worry about it. I mean, I've got enough things to cope with, and so it's just like whatever happens, happens. We operate as if we are a C4, which is what you're supposed to do when it's pending, so we just follow that, and that's how it goes.
Wow. Well, you know, it really is nice to have it, what shall we say, personal, meaning know a group, know somebody that is actually dealing with this with the government.
Yeah.
And I know we've seen Lois Lerner up there, and she's pleaded the fifth twice.
Yeah.
And, you know, what do you think when you see these things on TV?
I think that is such an outrage, because if you think about it, they work for us. You know, the taxpayers are funding all of these people, and they are supposed to be public servants who work for us. And think about if you're working for a big corporation and your boss called you in and wanted you to account for a problem or something that had gone wrong, you can't tell them I plead the fifth. You know,
I'm sure there's people that have tried it, Diane.
Well, maybe so, but I mean, you're going to be fired. I mean, that's basically, to me, if you're pleading the fifth, that's an admission of some sort of criminal wrongdoing, because otherwise, what are you afraid? Right. So I mean, I'm glad that finally with the Benghazi situation that they've appointed this special counsel to look into it, which was needed. But I'm like, the IRS does the same thing, because these issues still are not resolved, and the IRS has not stopped their harassment. They're continuing to harass more people and more groups.
You know, I think I thought it was very interesting when Bill O'Reilly had his interview with President Obama during Super Bowl Sunday. And the question of the IRS came up, and the president said there was not one smidgen of wrongdoing by the IRS.
Yeah.
I mean, from thinking about that, particularly in your situation, that kind of sounds like, does he know something we don't know?
That to me is just mind-boggling that he could make that statement, because when there's still groups like mine that still have no answer almost 4 years later, you have the nerve to say that? And some of the groups, I really felt like when I testified, my case was even like not nearly as bad as some of the others. There was a guy sitting next to me that was with National Organization for Marriage, and they literally had been able to prove that the IRS had taken their donor list and released it to a group that was for gay marriage. Mm-hmm. And then those donors were harassed by the gay marriage group. And that is a felony. And to date, I don't believe anything has happened on that, but they actually had proved, they had been able to show, like they had the paperwork, like when I guess it had been posted on a website, and they had copied it, and there's some sort of mark the IRS puts on, and they were able to like show how they tried to redact the IRS mark. So that's pretty bad when a definite felonies. I mean, in my case, you could say, well, maybe they're just incompetent or they're slow or whatever. Although the IRS themselves admitted to targeting groups that had the words Tea Party or Patriot in their names. I mean, they admitted that. So it's not even just incompetence.
It's not conjecture or anything.
Right.
They have done this.
Exactly.
So I guess where do you think the fault lies on this then? Where should action be coming from? From the House, from the Senate? Where should the action be coming from?
Yeah, well, definitely I mean, everything seems to be doing with the House. I'm not sure. Maybe the Senate. Do they do investigations? Maybe I'm not sure. Somebody.
They're sitting up there. I think they've just called for a special committee for Benghazi too, so we can have 2 special counsels. But anyway.
Okay. But I mean, but definitely our elected representatives should be looking into this.
Right.
At
Well,
a minimum. Yeah, that's their job. Is like, okay, you guys are the legislators. You're the ones who are funding these people. You're giving them money, and our citizens are being mistreated, and you need to do something about it.
Well, the next step in that, of course, is they have all the power with the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
Which just takes it to a whole nother level. Hey, I'm here with Dianne Belsom. She is the head of the Tea Party over there in Lawrence. We're going to be back in just a moment. Don't you go away. Oh, that's right. We're right back here, Sharp Facets Gallery. I'm here with Dianne Belsom. Yes, she was up there last year in June talking about why she couldn't have a 501c4 for the Tea Party organization over there in Lawrence. It's been 4 years, folks, 4 years, and still you don't have it. We got another election coming up. I think at least it's reassuring that you are acting or running your organization like it is tax exempt, because you haven't gotten an answer. It would seem one way or the other they could at least come back and say, yes, you can have it, or no, you can't, and here's the reason why. What?
Exactly.
I would say, what the is going on here?
Well, I personally think that the government is trying to stifle any speech that criticizes their agenda, and we're being targeted based on our political views.
Do you have any idea when it may be going to court or anything?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Haven't got that far. Aren't even close then, I guess.
I thought it was getting close, just from when my attorney emails me. I thought maybe it might come up sometime in the near future, but we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah. We were just talking about the Affordable Care Act and how we have this situation going on here with the IRS. You were telling me that you had looked up on the internet some of the organizations that are 501c4, and you were comparing them to, are they political or are they not political?
Right.
You want to just tell us a few of the names that you read, and then they said they shut you down, they wouldn't let you tell anymore?
Yeah, one of the Democrats had asked a question when I was testifying at this hearing, and he was, something about political, and my understanding from how the IRS defined political when we first applied, now they may have changed things since then, and they are trying to change things, but political is if you're involved in a campaigning for somebody, or working on a campaign, and it cannot, and you're allowed to do that as a C4, it just cannot be the bulk of what you do. I mean, the majority is supposed to be more like educational type of thing, which is true for us. But anyway, so I started reading off these list of organizations to him, and he basically interrupted me. But some of the ones that are already approved 501c4s, we have the ACLU, America Votes.
The ACLU?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were on there. Yep, America Votes, the Brady Campaign, the California League of Conservation Voters, the Democratic Leadership Council, Environment California, Gender Rights Maryland, Georgia Right to Life, Healthcare for America Now, National Transgender Advocacy Coalition, the New Democrat Network, VoteVets.org, Organizing for Action. This was one that one of the Republicans brought up at the hearing, because this is a quote, they advocate for the agenda of U.S. President Barack Obama. End of quote. And another quote, the group will advocate on key policy issues such as gun violence prevention, climate change, and immigration, and train future leaders and devote attention to local issues throughout the United States. But they're advocating for the agenda of Barack Obama. So, I mean...
Is that political?
Right. I mean, and to try
Sounds political to me.
Yeah, and to try to say, well, somehow because we are a group that's actually advocating for lower taxes, smaller government, more economic freedom, personal freedom, following our Constitution. I mean, those are kind of our core tenets. That there's a problem with that we're political and we shouldn't be allowed to have tax-exempt status.
Sure. Now, what do you think about the Constitution? There's a lot of conversation that the Constitution is totally outdated, and, you know, how could guys from the 1700s be able to write something that could be worthwhile today?
Well, wow. I disagree with that. I mean, the Constitution is actually a very short document as opposed to the, 2,000
2,500 pages.
Yeah, all these bills they keep passing that no one's read and no one seems to know what's in them. But it's pretty straightforward, and I think what it does, it just lays out, I mean, here's your separation of powers. You have 3 branches of government, and, you have these rights, and I think this is so critical. These rights are under attack right now, like the First Amendment rights of free speech and freedom of religion. There's just example after example of how the government is infringing on that. And the Second Amendment right to bear arms. I mean, the government keeps trying to pass more and more restrictive laws, and, okay, well, you need to register your guns. Well, any student of history knows that the first step in gun confiscation is gun registration. And that's what Hitler did. It's a bad idea. You do not want to register your guns. So, and like, Fourth Amendment is a right to not have unreasonable search
and seizure.
And, the TSA with all the stuff they're doing, and then the NSA with all their spying on us. I mean, come on. So it's really, to me, very scary, and I think more Americans need to be, if you don't know what these rights are, you need to be educated on what the Constitution really says and what your rights are, so you can take a stand for them, because if you don't stand, you're going to lose them.
I think the thing about it is that we could lose our rights and never realize that we had actually lost them until you wake up one morning and then you can't do any of these things. I might not be able to be on the radio.
That's right.
Right.
That's right, yeah.
It's just really like the FCC wanted AM stations, particularly, and talk radio.
Right.
They wanted, and at one point, remember just recently, they wanted to have somebody from the government seeing what news you were putting out there.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was a total outrage, and they had that fairness doctrine thing. It keeps resurrecting. It keeps getting voted down, but it keeps coming back like a bad dream. And it's basically trying to say, like, okay, if you're a conservative talk radio show and you have me on to talk about the Tea Party for an hour, you've got to have somebody else from, I don't know, American progressives or whoever, American communists come in and talk about their agenda for an hour. And it's like, what? Let the free markets decide. If people don't want to hear about this, you won't have any people listening to you.
And they'll change the channel, and there at 4 it'll be over with.
Right. This is just a totally gross constitutional infringement.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to come back. When we come back, we want to talk some about the people that you think would be good candidates, because I know you've been doing a lot of research. I personally am getting ready to interview a slew. I can't believe how many people are running for superintendent of education.
Yes, 8 Republicans.
Right. And then there's the Democrats too. It's a huge field. It's a huge field.
It is.
And so that is going to start. We're going to start next week, actually, interviewing candidates. Mm-hmm. We've got Lieutenant Governor. We've got Lindsey Graham, the Senate seat, and some others. So it is a fiercely competitive field, I think. Although some people are more vocal than others, it certainly is fiercely competitive. So we want to talk a little bit about maybe some of the research that you've done and what makes you think that these people that you've decided to support would be good as they fill in with the Tea Party. Mm-hmm. And then I'm sure we'll find something else to talk about. So you stay right with us. Right now it's time for South Carolina Radio News. We'll be back after the news.
Arg, are you a pirate or a pack rat? Do you have a vacation of a lifetime sitting in the attic? Or a college tuition hung on a wall? Or is a fabulous retirement hidden in your jewelry box? Bring those items to Sharp Facets Gallery. We can establish value and buy from you or sell for you. And so ends another chapter at Sharp Facets Gallery, 72 Bypass, and on the web, sharpfacets.com.
Ah, that's right. We're discussing political candidates. We cannot share what we were talking about, but it was fun. And I think one of the things that we have lost is our sense of humor on politics.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a serious matter, but if we
Uh-huh.
can't laugh about some of the things and see some of the things that our political candidates get themselves into, some of the tongue twisters that they say,
Yeah.
and if you can't look back on it and say, boy, that was a blooper, we have lost our sense of humor on stuff. And we
That's
need
right.
a sense of humor because we're dealing with serious stuff here.
That's right. That's right.
So I guess you have started your process of deciding which ones the Lawrence Tea Party would recommend. I guess do you
Right.
endorse or you recommend?
Yeah, and that's another misconception. Some people think a C4 cannot endorse, but according to my attorney, we can.
Okay.
So we do make endorsements. We don't necessarily make them, but we can. And every election since 2010, we have a committee, and we get together and we divide up all the candidates. We go home, we sit at our computers, and we research those candidates thoroughly. We try to interview them if possible, and then we get back together. And so that's where we're at right now. We're divided everybody up. So tomorrow night we're going to get back together and bring all our findings to the floor and discuss who we think would be the best candidates, and then our members will vote in another week on if we want to make endorsements or not. So those things can be contentious. You know, endorsements are always very tricky because you always have people who are very passionate about their candidate and they're upset when their candidate doesn't get it or whatever. To date, we actually have endorsed 2 already. So we've endorsed.
Who have you endorsed?
Yes, State Senator Lee Bright for the U.S. Senate in the Lindsey Graham race, and Sherry Few for the Superintendent of Education.
And as far as Sherry Few, since that is such a huge field,
Yes.
what for your group has set her apart for you?
Yeah. She had come and spoken, it was actually to our Republican Party about a year ago, and she was going around the state talking about the dangers of the Common Core in the educational system, and she came and spoke to our group about that. And she had started a group called South Carolina Parents Involved in Education. I'm not sure, I think some years ago. So she's been very involved in this issue as a mother with, I believe it's three sons who were in the public school system. So she came and then spoke as a candidate, and her message just resonated so much because really her tireless commitment to opposing Common Core and all her work on that has been phenomenal. And then she also talked about, vouchers. Everybody says, hey, the money should follow the student. And that's what a voucher is. And that really does make sense because so far the things that have been considered in recent years in our state legislature for school choice have been kind of like tax credits or whatever, but it wouldn't necessarily help if somebody doesn't have money to start with to go to put their child in a private school or maybe even just for homeschooling because you've got to buy your own materials. That really wouldn't be that much of a help. So that was one thing, and then she also talked about putting together like a task force of concerned citizens to sit down and review the textbooks and identify bias that's found in there and then expose that, publicly. And I thought that was a great idea. I really liked that. So she just really resonated with our group. And so she had a 100% endorsement.
Okay, well, there you go. Well, there's
Yeah.
one possibility, and let's see, I was just looking over my list. I don't know whether I see her on my list yet, but we are working to have all of them, as many as we can by the 10th.
Yeah,
So.
well, that's 8 on the Republican ticket, and I believe 4 on the Democratic ticket.
So that's a lot, yeah.
That's a lot just in that one race.
One of the things when we talk about education, I think you homeschooled for several years, didn't you?
Yes, about 6 years.
Yeah, what do you think about the experience of homeschooling? And now your daughter is, I guess, a junior, and she's in
Yeah. She
school.
did go back to a private school this year, but it was a great experience. I think she got a tremendous education through the homeschooling. And just an excellent one. It's really helpful to get into co-ops. In fact, Greenwood has a great co-op. I came over here for several years to the Classical Conversations co-op, which I believe has even expanded to several more locations since I was here because it's so popular. But it's a very rigorous program, but just excellent for instructing your child.
Wow. You know, one of the things I think we ought to talk about is I don't believe you have always been very politically active. Wasn't there a time in your life where you didn't worry about these things that much? You weren't that concerned, or?
I mean, my husband and I actually met in college in a club called Students for America.
Okay.
And I actually always did have an interest in politics and was concerned about different things, you know, even since I was a teenager. And I registered to vote as soon as I was 18, and I voted in every election since then. And, you know, but I would have to say that kind of under maybe like the Reagan years and, you know, I mean, even under Bush and Clinton, I mean, things were going along fairly well for the most part, you know. I mean,
you didn't feel you had to worry about every issue that was happening in the country.
Right. You know, it wasn't quite as it wasn't the situation we have now, where I feel like our constitutional republic is being dismantled one piece at a time, a little more every day, and it's really, really scary, because I fear if we don't keep standing and keep trying to stand up for our rights and do the right thing, that we could very easily devolve into a police state.
So what made you, did you actually start the
Yes.
Lawrence Tea Party? So
Yes.
what was the impetus that you said, enough is enough, I'm going to start
Right.
this organization?
Well, when President Obama got elected, I mean, anyone who was paying attention knew what he stood for, and I knew the sort of things he stood for, and I was very concerned about the direction he would be taking the country in. And I was really pretty devastated after that election. Not that I'm a huge John McCain fan, because I'm not, but I felt like he was the lesser of two evils. Unfortunately,
You know, that's a bad situation
I
when
know.
you look at the president of your country and you say the lesser of two evils.
I know. Yeah, so that is pretty discouraging. But at any rate, you know, it was really that Rick Santelli rant, you know, that it was like on, I think, I don't watch TV, I saw it on the internet, so maybe it was, is he on CNN? But he gave this whole little rant about, you know, we need to stand up, and it kind of birthed the whole Tea Party movement. And after that, you know, I started hearing about the Tea Parties, and I got this email from American Family Association, of all people, which seems kind of bizarre, really looking back. But they were saying, hey, we want one person in every county to step up and do a tax day rally in your community. And I was kind of like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, but but I'll do one, you know. So I did, and honestly, I had been so depressed since the election. And we did it, you know, around April 15th. We couldn't get it right on the 15th, but it was that week. And I came home that night after the rally, and we were just packed out. We had, you know, just a great turnout, a great rally, a great event. And that was the best I had felt since the election. I mean, it just really, I felt so much better. And just really being in the Tea Party movement. And so I ended up starting the actual formal organization about a year later. But I mean, that year we were involved with I was coming over to Greenwood and working with people, and the Greenwood Tea Party that was going at the time, and we did some more rallies and getting together with other patriots around the state, you know, stuff like that. And then
it seems like the Tea Party was a lot more active then. Mm-hmm. It seems like the Tea Party is more of an under-the-radar organization now. What do you think?
I think to a certain extent, some people have gotten a little battle fatigued, because, you know, we had the 2010 elections, and we you know, the House was taken over by the Republicans, and things were looking up, you know, and but since that victory, it's been kind of, you know, after that the IRS targeting started, and it really was difficult then with the 2012 elections, and really Mitt Romney was never a Tea Party candidate. I mean, that was discouraging to have him then as the Republican nominee, because again, it was kind of the lesser of two evils sort of feeling. And you know, so it's I think maybe some people got involved with the Tea Party movement feeling like it's a sprint.
Right.
But what they didn't realize was this is actually a marathon, you know, and the fight is hard. You know, when you step out, like myself, I mean, I've gotten various people attacking, or people say nasty things, and, you know, on the internet, and, you know, you're a target, and it's, you know, it's not an easy fight necessarily.
And you know, would you say that being a Tea Party person, does that make you a Republican? What does it actually make you?
Really neither. You know, like our Tea Party group is very opposed to Lindsey Graham.
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, he's a Republican. I mean, just because someone has an R by their name does not mean that they have the automatic stamp of approval. And we go by what is their voting record, and are they supporting the Constitution? Are they supporting liberty? And if they're not, we go after them. And there's only so much you can do. I mean, you can't necessarily manufacture candidates out of the thin air. And it's hard to find people who even
a lot of people
run.
I don't even think want to step forward anymore because they are attacked from all sides.
Right. It's very hard to be a candidate, and so it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. Now, I'm sorry, I got lost on what the original question was.
Well, Tea Party is not necessarily a Republican.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's not. I mean, some groups tend to be more libertarian. Sometimes you have, our group doesn't, but you could have some Democrats who are in the Tea Party. Where we are in Lawrence County is heavily Republican, and that's really just the makeup of our particular group is mostly, pretty much Republican, I would say.
Sure.
But each group kind of has their own DNA.
Sure.
It's not.
But Tea Party in general does not necessarily mean that. It just means people that are for the things like smaller government and going back to the Tea Party in the Boston Harbor or something. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Maybe it's about time. Remember when everybody was sending all the tea bags up there to Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, that's right.
We actually sent a whole box. We had people bringing them in, and we sent them to Nancy Pelosi.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I guess I miss about the Tea Party because it was so enthused.
Right.
And
I think there's a little more energy at the beginning. Yeah.
I think the reality and the fact with the IRS and the fact that I think a lot of people, even though they want to stand up, they are a little bit afraid to stand up.
They are. I even had somebody tell me this past week that he came to our initial rally back in 2009, and he said that he was afraid to sign up for anything or really be involved because this is before the IRS started, but I guess he kind of foresaw that could be a possibility, and so he did not want to get involved.
Wow.
And we've had more, plenty of people I think are afraid. They don't want to get audited by the IRS, and now it's been found out. Now with our Tea Party group, we have to, when we submit our paperwork, our officers' names are on the paperwork, but I've never given them any of the names of anybody involved, and nor would I. But some groups did turn over, I guess, donors or, names, and they found that 10% of those people were targeted for IRS audits. Whereas if you're just a Joe Blow public, your chance of an audit in general is 1%. So that just came out like this past week about that. So it's just unbelievable how the conservatives are being harassed and targeted.
Wow. Hey, we are right here at Sharp Facets Gallery. Our very special guest, Dianne Belsom, from over there in Lawrence with the Lawrence Tea Party organization. We are going to hear a quick word from our sponsors. If you've got a question, don't hesitate to call us, 229-7984. That's 229-7984. We'll be right back. Well, that's right. We're right here, Sharp Facets Gallery. One of the things that is kind of worrisome, though, here we are, we're coming up with the 2014 elections, then 2 years down the road we'll be voting for a president again.
Right.
But, the midterm elections, sometimes people don't get too excited about that.
Oh, yeah. And, this is, every election is important. But, it's very important to get out there and vote. The primary is June 10th.
Right.
So for those who are listening, make sure you go vote on that day and educate yourself on the candidates. So the Lawrence County Tea Party is vetting all of the statewide candidates and then just the ones that are more specific to Lawrence. So you may have some that we're not vetting that would be in the Greenwood area, but it's really not that hard to go to their website and go do just kind of like an internet search. Sometimes in vetting we've found out that the candidates had been arrested and, they have a little bit of a criminal record.
The thing about it is that I think is very interesting when you talk about that. It's okay to have been arrested, convicted of a crime and whatever. You can be in the Senate or the House in Washington, D.C., but, right here in the state, you can't.
Wow.
Wow, that's a pretty big one. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Well, but I personally think you would want to know, one of the candidates running for superintendent of education was actually arrested for homosexual solicitation in a park.
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah. And so, I mean, those are something you might want to know before.
Superintendent of Education. Yeah, you'd want to know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's, and also one of the Democrats running against Lindsey Graham, Jay Stamper, I mean, he has 3 felony convictions. Well, he pled guilty to 3 felony charges. Now, you look at what is, it was some sort of, had to do with business stuff, and he said he got bad advice from his lawyers. And it is true, there are an awful lot of laws out there that we're breaking laws every day that we don't even know.
Can't even breathe. What are you talking about?
Right. So, I mean, that's his side of the story. But, it's important to be aware of these things.
Yes, it is important to be aware of these things. So you're getting ready to vet the rest of your candidates now. You meet once for some people that might be listening that might like to come over, because Greenwood doesn't have a group or is not very active.
Yeah, Greenwood did have a group, and really the person leading it had other family commitments and wasn't able to do it any longer, and they didn't have anyone to step up to lead. And I think Greenwood would love to have a group if there was somebody willing to do it. And we currently have some people from Greenwood who drive over to our meetings. So we meet once a month. It's usually the 3rd Thursday of each month. This month we had a big rally, Liberty is Rising, this past Monday, so we're kind of off our schedule.
Right.
Our vetting committee is meeting tomorrow night, and then our members will meet to vote on the endorsement issue the following Thursday.
Sure. So if somebody wants to get more information, you have a website, you have a telephone number. How can people reach you?
Yes. Our website is lawrencetparty.org.
Okay.
lawrencetparty.org. If anybody wants to call me, I'll give you my cell phone number.
Okay, all right. I mean, that's great. I mean, because sometimes people want to ask a question, they don't want to have to go through the radio. Or
Right. It's just 864 is my cell, and then 684 0587.
0587. And this is a woman that has testified in front of the House Ways and Means Committee up there in Washington, D.C. She's still standing, folks.
That's right.
And you said it was pretty grueling going up there, because you had the press meeting you when you got on the plane, you got off the plane. I mean, the press was everywhere.
Right. Yeah, and I am not really a person that's big on press.
Right.
It's a little out of my comfort zone, but yeah, it was just, and plus flying up there, and, it's just you're going to, I'm not really very familiar with Washington, D.C., and, having to go up there and do all that.
Sure. But now, have you done some traveling to go with some other organizations, Tea Party groups outside of the state, or have you done anything like that?
I've been over to Georgia for a training with Freedom Works, but we just drove, and then I've been up to D.C. For another Freedom Works training. And then, just a few things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, are there any big rallies coming up in the state that you know about?
Actually, there is one for Lee Bright that's coming up this next Monday. Lee Bright is another one we have endorsed. I don't know if I mentioned that, but we've endorsed him for the U.S. Senate. And he's having a rally in Greenville this coming Monday at it's a place called Zen.
Zen.
Okay. It's like on Main Street in downtown Greenville. And they are doing a free gun giveaway and free barbecue. And
I've heard about this. He's doing a rally to raise funds, isn't he, for the gun giveaway?
Well, I don't think there's any charge to attend. But
a charge to get part of the raffle?
No. And in fact, we just did, Lee Bright spoke at our rally this past Monday, and we did a gun giveaway as well. And we didn't charge anything. You just had to show up, fill out a little piece of paper, and put your name in. And if you got drawn, you got a gift certificate for a free gun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
That can make you real popular, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. I don't remember those type of things happening in previous elections. Do you?
I know. I never thought about doing it before, but I was like, wow, this is a great idea.
Okay. All right. Anything else that you think that as far as people as they get ready to vote, one of the things that really bothers me is the fact that we don't teach civics in school, and so our kids are just not understanding, and so they're very influenceable.
Yeah. I would think, sometimes it's hard to beat the candidates who have a lot of money. And like Lindsey Graham, for example, has over $7 million. He's heavily funded by out-of-states and special interests and big business. And, and they have the money then to run ad after ad after ad, and you really need to not just listen to what these ads are saying on the radio or TV. You need to do your own research, because Lindsey Graham tries to tell you he's a conservative, but his voting record shows otherwise. And so just do your homework and don't believe everything you hear on the TV and the radio.
Yeah. You know, I think, though, if you're not able to compromise, how do you move them out? I mean, you know, I think we've seen so much of no, 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 and we've seen nothing happen in Washington, too.
Well, the problem is the agenda that's trying to be pushed right now, the only thing you can do is say no. You know, I mean, unless you want your country destroyed. So, you know, that's a real problem.
Well, that's an interesting story that way,
Well,
yes.
I mean, think about it. I mean, how, if somebody's goal is to basically institute a communistic system, and you are opposed to communism, and you support free markets and freedom, and,
Right.
you know, how do you compromise on that, you know?
I don't know. But I do think that we have had so much gridlock.
Right.
And in a lot of ways, this is WCRS right here in Greenwood. We're going to stay on just a second. In a lot of ways, it makes it difficult for anything to happen. And
Right.
in the meantime, we see executive orders coming down and this type of thing.
Right.
And I just wonder some days if it wouldn't be better if we could finally put a group of people together. We've seen it on some issues between the Democrats and the Republicans. The Keystone Pipeline, there's a good example. We've seen some Democrats say, yes, this would be good for our country.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I agree, but it seems like it's always the Republicans who are being expected to compromise, and we just keep getting further and further off track.
Yes,
So.
exactly. Well, it's going to be interesting. The primary is June 10th.
Yes.
I know if you would like to get some input from the Lawrence Tea Party, I know they'd love to have you over there. Go to their website. What's that website one more time?
It's lawrenceteaparty.org.
lawrenceteaparty.org. That's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course you can call Dianne 684-0587. That's 864 area code. Dianne, it's been a real pleasure having you on the radio. You know, we always say, what are we going to talk about? We always find something to talk about, don't we?
The time flies
It
when
does.
you're having fun. Thank you so much.
All righty. This is WCRS right here in Greenwood. Bye-bye, everybody.